everybody. I'm Liz West, and today on Explained, we're going to walk you through what a healthy and independent life can look like. From tools for preventing serious illness to sensible ideas for active and engaged living, our experts will offer tips for maintaining your health and independence for decades to come. And we're going to start off with Rudy Buttignol. Rudy's the president of the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, a not-for-profit organization that advocates for and educates about, among other things, preventative health measures and community connectivity for Canadian seniors. Welcome, Rudy. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
One of the things that you promote is healthy aging, and that includes vaccines. And it feels like we've lost some of our momentum around vaccinations post-COVID. At this particular time, it's important, though, because this is RSV, flu, and COVID season. So what are you doing to educate folks around it to remind us the importance of vaccines?
Well, vaccines are more important than ever, especially with new viruses coming every day. I think we've been victims of our own success. We've done so well with vaccines in the past, like polio and measles, that people tend to forget and figure that, well, that's it, we don't have to do anything. So, but it's more important than ever before. We do our best. We educate our members constantly. We give them the best expert scientific advice and recommendations on vaccines, particularly high-dose vaccines. And we work with our education partners to make sure we get our message out to the public in general by keeping current with vaccines and looking at what new vaccines dealing with the new threats, making sure people are aware of that and up to date on their vaccines.
Yeah, it's nice to have one source that you can trust that's sort of doing some of the homework for you and weeding through the information to distill it down to something that we can actually understand.
Yeah, we speak with experts, and we really amplify the message of expert-recommended vaccines, and we also work with government to make sure that those vaccines are available, freely available to everyone, and ensure that provincial programs also include education and awareness.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're mentioning that because you advocate for free vaccines for the ones we've talked about, the flu, the COVID, and the RSV, but also other ones like shingles and pneumonia. How do you work with government and policymakers to make that accessible?
Well, we deal directly with provincial and federal health authorities, and thanks to our strength in numbers, we're able to get to politicians. Just in the month of January, we had the chance to deal directly with the Alberta Minister of Health. Just a few days ago, I met with the federal seniors minister. And again, we're constantly advocating to governments, particularly provincial governments, why vaccines are important, but why it's important to make sure that they're free for everyone. I know we focused in the past on vaccines for seniors, but actually with a lot of vaccines are expert recommended for different age groups. And I think it's by making sure that we individually are vaccinated and safe, we keep our community safe, because I think that's the key.
That's a great point. It doesn't work unless everybody's involved. And you brought up the number of members you have. I think it's around 254,000 in the country. That's a huge and powerful number. And we're headed towards an election, a federal election. Is this where you ramp up your efforts?
This is where we bring our efforts, really, we focus them on the specific elections. We look at what our top priorities are, vaccinations right up there with them. And because of our strength in number, I'm reminded what a colleague said. He said, you know, we're old, we're grumpy, and we vote. And you know,
sometimes in that order.
And sometimes definitely in that order. And politicians are aware of that. And that's why when we ask to meet with provincial health ministers and premiers and top ministers and authorities, they meet us because they understand that we represent this powerful group of seniors who are quite involved and interested in advocating for great health for seniors and the society in general.
And the number's only growing, really.
Yes.
And now I want to switch topics and talk about falls, because unfortunately, falling is something that seems to go hand in hand with aging. And I know that CARP has made this a priority to deal with. Why is that?
Well, fall prevention is really important. It's the work advanced by one of our chapters, one of our 23 chapters. It's advanced by Ottawa. It's amazing how a change in level at your home that can be one step high can be that thing that has deadly consequences. You know, you fall, you break a hip, you end up becoming bedridden, you're more prone to things like pneumonia. So fall prevention is really important. Just the general awareness, why a handrail in the proper place is important, proper lighting, and maybe sometimes making sure that you alter your situation at home where possible to avoid those kind of steps. Those are the practical things that you can do. The other thing that everyone can do is making sure that you've got good body strength. The fact that you're still active, that you've got good muscle mass, that you're not really brittle, as you know, because as we get older, you know, we lose a lot of our the energy that we have, but if we're able to stay active, it's a big, huge help in fall prevention.
Right, helps with your balance, and I guess when you fall, even just being able to get back up.
That's right.
Is a big deal. Let's talk about being socially active as we age, because that also matters beyond just your physical health. You can be affected through isolation, can come depression. What can be done to support both body and mental health?
Well, you know, loneliness is the scourge of old age. It really leads to a lot of other unhealthy outcomes. And I'm mindful of this expert out of the Western University. His name was Dr. Hashinsky. He's world renowned on brain and body health. And his ABCs were to healthy aging, to warding off things like dementia, was you know, activity, a balanced diet, and connectedness. And he said the connectedness was actually the key, because when you're connected, you tend to be more active. You know, you'll get out there and go for a walk with your friends. And when you're more active, you develop a better appetite. So you get a balanced appetite. So those are really practical things, you know, staying connected with people. And those are things everyone can do for themselves. And I think, and culturally, as a community, we need to be more responsive to intergenerational mixing. We shouldn't just be hanging around with people our own age. We should be mixing with people of all different ages. I think it's healthy.
Yeah, that's a great way of positioning it. I also want to talk about aging at home, because I know that's a priority, and having a Canadian healthcare system that really supports the idea of aging in place. What are you doing to work on that? That's
a top priority for us, aging in place, because almost everyone we speak to says, I want to stay in my home, if possible, to the very end. And that is possible for many people. You know, with our aging population, home care, care in your own community is the future. There's no way the institutions will be able to meet the demand of the aging population. And besides, it's what everybody wants.
And it's cheaper for the healthcare system.
In the end, it's vastly cheaper. And also it's healthier for people because they want to stay connected to their community. They want to be able to walk to the corner store and socialize with that person they've met, to meet with their neighbors and that. So aging in place is really, really important. And we are advocating for making that as possible. Now, it's not possible for everyone. Long-term care, you know, assisted living, those are there for those that need it. But so many people have the ability to just age in place.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits too is that then the individual social circle and family is there to support them versus healthcare workers all the time. If you're in a hospital setting, for example, you're really dependent on staff. But when someone's aging at home, that means their friends, their family can support them as well, which helps everybody.
It does help everybody. And besides, we all want to stay in our community. We're in homes for a good reason, that we've settled because we like the place and we like our neighbors and we like our friends. And that is, I think, important for keeping a good, healthy mindset.
Where do you think CARP is making the biggest strides right now when it comes to, I guess, healthy living and aging in place?
Well, my thinking is that there's, like ourselves, our community, many different ways. So my feeling is, let 1,000 flowers bloom. There will be thousands of different solutions. For instance, our Barrie chapters working with seniors that are now mostly women living on their own in a big house, and they still want to be homeowners.
Yeah.
So they're exploring the Golden Girls model. We're a group
It's so funny you're saying this, because I literally had this conversation with my girlfriends. We said, just so we all agree we're going to be living together in a house when, you know.
Right.
The guys go.
Well, yeah, a lucky guy who gets to move in there. But I think that that's one model where people still want to be homeowners, but they want to work, live together. And so we're working, assisting that chapter to make sure that the insurance and the municipal zoning allows it. Another way is when you live in a big house is working with colleges and universities. Can you provide student accommodation in exchange for help around the house, help with the groceries? So there are a lot of different models. And again, let 1,000 flowers bloom.
That's exciting. You never know what's around the corner. It's there's always new ideas being cooked up, and these sound fantastic. I love it. We got to think out of the box. Thank you so much, Rudy. How do people get in touch with CARP should they want to find out more?
Well, that's really easy. It's go to our website. It's carp.ca. There's all the information that you'll need, and also I encourage everyone to join the movement. We're strong. Our voices are amplified. We're stronger in numbers, so join and you get a benefit of information that comes out every week.
And you get your voice heard, because sometimes that feels really good.
That's the most important thing. People want to be heard.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, later in the show, we're going to focus on lifestyle tips for healthy aging with Dr. Anthony Levinson and The Tonic's Jamie Bussin. But for now, let's talk about the idea of community and how it impacts health. What do we know? Well, we know that 9 in 10 Canadians want to age in place, and we just talked a bit about that. It turns out, though, even scientifically speaking, maintaining your social connections will lead to happiness, which in turn can fuel a longer, better life. And right now we're joined by Yvonne Ziomecki-Fisher. Yvonne is the Chief Customer Brand and Advice Officer at HomeEquity Bank. That's a CARP recommended partner whose mission it is to help customers find and fund their purpose in retirement. And welcome, Yvonne. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good. So I've been hearing about this term, the triangle of happiness, and I'm hoping you can tell me more about that. What does it mean?
Absolutely. So triangle of happiness is this concept from a university in Australia, and basically identifies 3 things that we need in life to be happy. One is financial stability, so having enough money to do what we want to do. The second one is relationships, so having meaningful connections, meaningful relationships. Rudy just talked about that. And the third one is a sense of purpose. So when you wake up in the morning, do you actually have a sense of purpose? Do you know how you're spending your time? Do you feel like your time is spent in most valuable ways?
So funds, community, and purpose.
Purpose, exactly.
Oh, wonderful. We're going to dig into that, because community can be defined in different ways. Ultimately, when in retirement, it's usually about where you live. You left the workplace and that community. So what are your insights on why it's so important for your customers to really build and maintain those strong new community ties, really?
So we did a study with Canadians 45 plus in the fall of last year. We got a lot of interesting information. Community is definitely one of the more important things people talked about. So, you know, when you leave your workplace or when you leave kind of the regular routine, having a sense of community is really important. So it could be your neighbors, your friends, your local store, just having those routines, because work usually forces routines on us, and then you go home and you wake up on your first day and you have to figure out new routines. So having friends you can grab a coffee with, having someone you can go and play pickleball with or go and see a movie is really important. You know, isolation can happen. People find that work was their entire identity. So once the work is gone, they don't know who they are. And if they have a really good circle of friends or that community around them, they will reinforce, you know, Yvonne, you're not just about the job. You're the person, you know, who likes to have fun. You're a person who likes to spend time with your kids. So that is really important. And also, you know, for us, women at our age, we're probably going to live till our 80s, if you know.
In a house together, as
can I move in? Actually, I went in on that list. So it's also important to kind of plan ahead, like who is that community that you're going to move with, the physical fitness, being engaged. And what we found through the survey is as people get older, their sense of community actually increases, because they're making very thoughtful, very deliberate decisions on who they are spending their time with.
Yeah, when you talked about going for a coffee, I think coffee shops are so great just for the purpose of it's a place you can go and meet, and it's easy, and there's one on every corner. And when you walk by, they're always full of people just huddled together, chatting.
We have a family friend who lives in North Bay, and he's in his late 70s, and he has a group of 10 gentlemen. And every morning at Tim Hortons, they're having their coffee, and that is their routine. That's the community that they've built for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the boomer and zoomer generation. So many have spent a long time in the same home, and they've experienced a lot of the milestones. You've had your children in the home and, celebrated different events. What do you think the benefits are to that?
So I think, I think about my parents. My parents live in Poland, and they have a modest townhome. They've lived there for a very long time. And there's a couple of things. So like you said, there's memories of all the different events that we had and family coming together that are really precious. And they come with stuff. They come with photo albums. They come with, birthday gifts, anniversary gifts.
Mementos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, if they were to move, where does that stuff go? And does that mean you're purging your past? So that's something really difficult to think about. Being familiar with the house that you live in, Rudy talked about that before, that one extra step when you move into a new house, or the wall that you didn't remember was there, that can cause to trips, falls, minor accidents that can then become a lot more serious. And then back to the community, right? My parents, they have their routine. They know where the bus stop is and what time the bus comes to take them downtown. They go to the grocery store. The pharmacist knows them, even if they forget the documents to show. So it actually takes a lot of stress and pressure being in an environment that you're comfortable with. And as we age, there's just too much happening and too many decisions to be made. So things that can kind of stay the same and take the pressure off are important. 9 in 10 aging Canadians want to stay in the home that they're currently living in because of that, and also, in home care is a lot easier than being in a hospital and long-term home.
And I know the idea of downsizing can be overwhelming and almost paralyzing for someone who has to think about, what do I do with my stuff?
Absolutely. So, downsizing, I feel like there are two parts to downsizing. One is the financial one. People often think, if I sell this house and I buy a smaller house, I'm going to free up money for retirement or to travel, supplement my income. But the reality is, once you pay the realtor, once you move outside the area that you're comfortable because you're downsizing, once you start selling your stuff and you have to pay somebody to help you through that, you're not winning a lottery by downsizing unless you drastically change your lifestyle. And that may have an impact on the emotional side. So that's the other side, is getting rid of memories. I have boxes of cards that my girls have written for me, and they're preciously stored. Like, if I had to downsize at some point, how do you make decisions? Which pictures are you keeping, or handwritten notes? So I think it can work for some people and makes sense in some circumstances, but you probably need a longer time. You should talk to your family, your friends, and you should really think through it. It's hard to reverse the decision.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Can't get your house back.
Nope.
If you're sorry. Okay, let's talk about contributing to your community, because that's such an important thing too, and it sort of relates to this third part of the triangle, which is the purpose.
Yes.
And that might be easy for some folks, but what advice do you give to someone who wants to find their purpose?
I think there's a couple of dimensions that we hear about from people we talk to. So one is volunteering. And volunteering, I think volunteering is the best if you're doing something that you really love. So I love an organization that helps immigrants with clothing and educational programs, training programs. That speaks to me. I'm an immigrant. I like clothes. I like education. It works really, really well. So finding something that resonates with you. A lot of people get into hobbies and get involved in the community. I have an aunt who is a very gifted artist, but her parents insisted that she gets a master's degree in geology, geology art. So in her 50s, she started painting again, and then it just kind of opened her up to new opportunities and new people. I have someone at work yesterday who resigned. He's retiring, and I said, first of all, congratulations. Second of all, what are you going to do? And he said, I've always wanted to travel across Canada with my wife. And I want to do it when I'm healthy and when I can do it. And I want to spend with my grandkids when I can still play with them. So there's different dimension, depends on a person, depends on age, on your health. But there is a lot people can consider and choose from.
You've also talked about funds and money and how that can be an important factor to having a happy life. For some people, the idea of the traveling across the country or making memories for your family, a barrier can be, do I have the funds to do this? How can you fund that, for example?
So, you know, there's different ways, right? Some people have savings. They've been great savers, although interest rates haven't been great, so maybe those savings haven't built up. So that's one way. Another way is people who own a house. Oftentimes it's paid off and they can access equity in the home. Some people have pensions, so that's a steady source of income. What we know about pensions is with inflation and cost of living increasing, the pensions are not really keeping up with the costs that people have to bear. So, you know, when we talk to people about financing needs in retirement, we talk about lines of credit. So if you own a home, you can get a line of credit. You do have to show that you have some income and you can make payments on the line of credit. Or we talk to them about CHIP, Canadian Home Income Plan, where you can get money from the house and you don't have to pay interest until you sell the house or you move out of the house. So interest accumulates, but it gets to be paid later. And you know, we're finding people are a lot more open now to talk about finances than maybe when I joined the company 10 years ago. It was a little bit of a taboo to talk about money. Now people are more curious and they want to look into things and find solutions that are best for them.
And it sounds like from what you've just described, there are a variety, there's a menu of solutions,
Yes.
and you probably personalize it on a case-by-case basis. Let's talk about the reverse mortgage. How does someone know that they're a good candidate for that?
Well, the easiest way to figure out you know, how much money you could get, which is the number one question we get from people, is you come to our website, chip.ca. It has a lot of information. We find people are not quick to make financial decisions in retirement. They really want to be educated, so there's a lot of information on the website. But there's also calculators, so you can find out based on your age, the value of your house, how much you could qualify for. People also worry about, you know, what happens, does the bank take over the house, or what happens if I stay in the house for a long time? So there's calculators to figure out, you know, if you stay in the house 20, 30 years at this interest rate, how much money are you still going to have at the end of the term? People find that very, very helpful. There's different ways people use the money. You know, people use it to pay off a conventional mortgage because mortgage payments have been going up with higher interest rates, so that's hard to keep up with on top of inflation. People use it as a pension, so they may qualify for $500,000, but they only take $2,000 a month, and that's enough for Tim Hortons coffees, wings on Fridays, you know, little in-province trip. And then people are using it in a different way. So because we're living longer, they're using it to help their families. So help kids get into the real estate market or fund a university education in another country. Just a really, really wide range. And I love hearing all the stories and how the landscape is changing.
And I think it's probably worth mentioning that HomeEquity Bank is a bank.
Yes.
And that if someone is listening and thinking, yeah, but I deal with my bank over here, you're regulated just like all the major banks.
Yes, and we actually work with a lot of them. So if you don't want to come to us directly, you can go to the bank that you deal with. We have partnership with them. But yes, we're regulated by the same regulator. Any client who goes to get a reverse mortgage actually has to go and get independent legal advice because we want to make sure that they are protected and that we are protected down the road. And yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend people at least look into it and see if it's an option for them.
Great. And when it comes to making the decision about should I stay in my home, what are the kinds of things it's wise to think about?
Well, I think it's wise to think about the lifestyle. You know, what sort of lifestyle do I want to keep? How important is the community? How connected am I to the community? The house itself, you know, is it too big? Is the upkeep too much? I have a family friend who lives in a really big house with a gorgeous pool. She's 85, and she's keeping the house because that's the gathering place for the family. So she hosts dinners for 25 plus. In the summer, all the grandkids and great grandkids are there. So there's their financial considerations, their lifestyle, and their emotional considerations for people.
And I guess also if you're going to have to retrofit it in any way, maybe you want to add a powder room to the main floor or a bedroom or whatever to sort of factor in, do I need, you know, some money to do that at some point?
Yes,
right?
and you can ask an occupational therapist. They can come into your house and do an assessment and show you which areas need a little bit of a retrofit.
Great, Yvonne. So where can people find more information on your financial products and things like a reverse mortgage?
So they can go to chip.ca or they can call 1-888-592-2447 and get a copy of the book that I co-wrote on reverse mortgages.
Well, and I just happen to have that book.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, everybody, when you're leaving the studio, our audience is going to get a copy of this as well. So that's fun. I would throw this out there, but I would probably hit someone in the face, so I'm not going to do that. Thank you so much for being with us, Yvonne. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Oh boy, well, we've talked about the importance of community, and if you're not a homeowner or if you're maintaining your home is just too much to handle on your own, many seniors will opt for apartments in a retirement community, but not all retirement communities are created equal, as we know. Joining us now is Heather Janes. Heather is the CEO of Christie Gardens and a change maker in the sector. She's here to discuss how her team fosters healthy aging and a healthy living environment for both residents and staff. And thanks so much for being with us today, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
Christie Gardens is not for profit. So what difference does that make?
The retirement sector is large. I love the conversation today because there's such a wide spectrum of opportunities out there to either stay in your home or to move. There are a lot of for-profit and not-for-profit companies out there. There are good people working on both sides. One of the things that's challenging about our sector, about the healthcare sector in this province, is that government funds go towards for-profit companies that ultimately have a high priority on their shareholders. It's very difficult at the end of the day to make decisions that prioritize elders when you have the pressure of shareholders. So again, good people working on both sides, but a not-for-profit community can often be more flexible and more nimble. We're a standalone company, so we also have the ability to innovate and move differently. And any surpluses that we make go back into the home, go back into elder care.
What do you mean by standalone?
We are we don't belong to a larger chain. And we just celebrated our 40th anniversary, so we've been giving this kind of care in Toronto for a long time.
40 years young, as we say.
Yes.
You are patient-forward wellness and fitness-forward, too. So can you explain what that means?
So, of course, moving and breathing, and this is also good for our health and our brain health, which your next guest is going to talk about. But it's more than just great yoga classes and instructors, and we have a beautiful fitness facility. It really is about this idea that giving back and reciprocal care. So if we are serving elders, and at Christie Gardens we have a lot of really independent people that move in, they're actually moving in more for community than for care. Maybe the house was too much to handle, but often your house can become an isolating piece. It really can be that thing that kind of becomes you can become incarcerated almost in your home. Because you're tied to it and you don't want to leave it. So many of our folks that move in for community. And there's a lot of health benefits to that. But continuing to give back. So we've got advocates, we've got folks that were professors in our local universities who are lecturing to our community. I have an astrophysicist who really led the way when we had the eclipse. And we had 50 of our residents out there looking for it and experiencing that together. So you do not leave yourself at the door. You do not check your brains at the door when you move into retirement living. And that kind of health is about giving back and about not stopping who you are at the door.
Wow, I love that. At Christie Gardens, residents are seen and heard. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that matters most. We are a continuum of care. So we've got independent living, we have assisted living services, and then we have a 75-suite nursing home where we care for our most vulnerable seniors. When you are at your most vulnerable, when you are living with dementia, if that were to happen, it's so important the way we look to engage people when they can't speak for themselves. It's really important how we use words. We have something we say all the time to staff, that words build worlds. And you know, one of the common phrases that's used in my sector is behaviors. We've got folks who are exhibiting behaviors. It's really important not to refer to it that way. They're actually expressions of need. If you can't use words anymore, if you're having difficulty with that, but you're in pain, or if you're startled, or you know, someone comes in the room and turns the light on at 5 in the morning and startles you, you're going to have an issue with that. And it's not a behavior. You wouldn't want that either if someone walked into your room at 5 in the morning and turned your light on. So it's really important how we use words. In my sector, we used to refer to people who needed help in the dining room as feeders. They needed feeding.
Okay.
And that was very common, and you know, you get used to it. It's not bad people, it's just we get used to using certain phrases. So we refer to that as meal assistance. This resident needs meal assistance. So, you know, a lot of it is language. It's how we teach our staff to refer to folks who are vulnerable and who need our support. And so, and you have to be innovative the way around the way you engage and hear people who are in need of that level of support.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of stereotypes that need busted.
Yeah.
Really.
Big time.
Right? And,
Yes.
and it takes time to do that, and it can be difficult. But as more of us, you know, enter into retirement communities, we're probably part of the busting, right? Because we recognize that our how we see the place where someone goes in, as you said, you check the brains at the door.
Yeah.
Not the case at all.
Not the
It's just a new place to live.
It is.
With access to extra help.
Yeah, if
right?
and when you need it.
Yeah, when you need it, exactly. And what are the kind of things that you can offer people as those extra help items?
Yeah, well, so again, back to wellness. You know, most retirement homes are going to have great food and a good fitness program, and but we don't expect people to come in and sit and knit. And I don't expect my 20-something recreation therapist to understand what they really need, you know, so, and what's really going to engage them. So we have a wonderful group called the Resident Programming Committee that puts on the programs. If you go onto a website, if you're looking at retirement living and you go onto a website and you look at their calendar of activities, it should be very different than it looked 2 to 3 years ago, because new people have moved in with new interests. Christie Gardens tends to attract folks who are activists, who are academics because of our proximity to universities, and artists. We have a ton of artists. So, you know, we have a 40-member choir because a lot of people there like to sing and they see the health benefits. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful.
That would be great.
It is. And they've been doing that for 12 years. That
And do
choir's
they
been going.
tour around and perform?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also have an orchestra that just started up because a couple of new people moved in and said, I don't really want to sing, but I really see the benefits of coming together and making music. So we have an orchestra that just started up. And we also have a really active Indigenous awareness group that seeks to educate their peers on that important issue. So it is about what's on the calendar reflects the people that live there. It should not reflect the recreation therapist that works there.
And can you describe the benefits to the residents who get to engage with the music, the art, the whatever the activity is?
Yeah, I mean, if you have activists, academics, and artists moving in, and you tell them that we're going to have bingo at 2 o'clock, like that's just, I mean, it's frankly demoralizing unless you like bingo, but I mean, some people do. But it is just the reciprocal care that happens and the purpose that continues to happen when you're engaged at a different level is so important. We have this really cool program that just started called the Amazing Music Project, where these young guys who actually live in the neighborhood, they've done this at a few homes, and they're coming in and they're just doing it's like a book club for music. So they have a song is the topic of the day, and everybody talks about that Beatles song,
really?
and maybe they went to that concert, or maybe that was their least favorite Beatles song, and at the end of it, a book is produced around how people connect and reminisce around music. So,
Wow.
that's not bingo. So
Wow.
it is really about creative, innovative engagement. And then as people age in place, they may need to move to our nursing home area. There's already those relationships built in. They already know the staff. They know they're valued. They know our approach is reciprocal care. And reciprocal care is one of the most important things.
You've talked about, or it sounds like overall, you're really trying to change the way society views and interacts with seniors. So what are some of the projects and the things that you're working on to help see that change happen?
Yeah, we had a really neat program that started last year. We partnered with this wonderful prof from University of Toronto, and he actually embedded one of his gerontology classes in our home. So every Friday morning.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so every Friday morning, 25 students from the U of T, undergrad students taking a gerontology course, come to our home and take that class inside of our home. But we made it intergenerational, so we had selected 25 of our residents who applied to be a part of it, became their learning partner, and they took the class together and they did projects together, and to watch the relationships that have come out of that, and we're doing it again this fall. So intergenerational programs have become really important. So we've been going around to conferences and just saying to other homes, you got a room in your home, you have a university in your town, do this thing, because the benefit to the kids who came in and were really kind of like nervous to be around the elders, and even the elders themselves had ageism towards the kids, but then by the end of the semester, just watching how they had become friends, truly friends. And these kids still come and they take someone out to dinner, and so intergenerational programs, and we've heard that today already, are super important. But just challenging ageism in general. We have a PR campaign happening right now that basically says never stop being you. Whether you stay at home and receive home care, whether you choose to move into a community, don't leave yourself at the door. You are a lawyer, keep advocating. You are an astrophysicist, keep lecturing. We want you to. We want all of you. We've got journalists that live at Christie who are still writing. Like, why not? Like, don't stop being you is really the message.
Okay, that is a great message. I love it. Thank you so much, Heather, and congratulations on everything that's happened, and good luck with all your efforts.
Thank you.
How can people find out more about Christie Gardens?
Well, website, good old-fashioned website. We're also on Instagram, of course, and those fun spaces, but christiegardens.org is our website. And you can see some of the cool things our foundation is doing around this ageism campaign.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to tackle the topic of brain health. More than 750,000 Canadians began the new year living with a form of dementia. Yeah, a number expected to actually climb to 1 million by 2030. That according to the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. And a big part of it has to do with the aging population and the reality that people are living longer. So to dig into this, we're joined by Dr. Anthony Levinson. Dr. Levinson is a psychiatrist, and a professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at Hamilton's McMaster University, and he's a contributor to McMaster's Optimal Aging Portal, an online source for healthy aging information. Welcome, and thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that number that I gave out about the increasing amount of dementia cases, it's kind of staggering, and I'm sure people are a little gobsmacked at hearing that. But we're hearing that there's a way to modify the risk factors. So let's start with, what's the number one thing you can do to stave off dementia?
Not grow old.
Okay, number two.
Yeah. Number two. So of the risk factors that you can change, and there are many, I'll pick two.
Okay.
Physical activity. Exercise is probably the closest thing we have to a miracle drug in medicine. And probably the second thing that Canadians can do is looking after hypertension and their blood vessel health.
Okay, so let's talk about exercise, because that can mean different things to different people. I walk 3 times a week, or maybe someone's going in and doing full-on aerobics exercises. When you say exercise, what does that really look like?
So Canada does publish 24-hour movement guidelines. For some people, the guidelines might be a bit daunting because it does equate to about 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. So about 30 minutes 5 times a week, and also doing strength exercises and balance training, very important. Some of your speakers have talked about, those things. So any activity is better than nothing. Picking something that you like and getting started. So starting with walking and sort of progressing. But the more active, the better. The less sedentary, the better. Many of us are more sedentary than we should be, but that's the type of guidelines around activity levels.
Well, I mean, 30 minutes a day, it's not impossible, right? It doesn't have to mean going to the gym. It just means getting off your couch or your chair.
Yeah.
I want to get back to the other item that you mentioned, which I think was cardiovascular. Can you elaborate?
Hypertension or high blood pressure.
Yeah,
So,
what specifically do you mean?
so when you put on a blood pressure cuff, usually at your doctor's office, and they measure the top number and the bottom number. An average that people are probably familiar with is the top number being 120 and the bottom number being 80. Those are different aspects of your blood pressure. And for many people in Canada over the age of 40, they actually meet the criteria for high blood pressure or hypertension. Over time, that can quietly affect the blood vessels in your brain and is one of the modifiable risk factors for dementia.
Right, so that's something you want to pay attention to as soon as you find out.
Yeah.
Right? Great reason to go see your doctor at least once a year for a checkup. Yeah. Let's talk about weight, because that's something that seems to be attached to a lot of different issues. Is that a factor when it comes to dementia?
So
Brain health.
obesity is thought to account for about 1% of the prevalence or cases of dementia. So it is a factor. It's maybe not the most important risk factor, but it's also a very common one in Canada. So trying to maintain a healthy weight is another important goal that can help to reduce your risk.
What are some of the other conditions that can be caused by being overweight that can affect your brain health?
So there is, I think, a risk of there being a bit of a cascade of risk factors, though that's not always the case. But what I mean is sometimes if people are obese, they might become less active. That isn't always true. But again, physical activity is an important risk factor. There's some evidence around certain types of diets promoting brain health. So people have sometimes heard of the Mediterranean diet, where there's more plant-based proteins, fresh fruits, vegetables, less salt as seasonings, more using herbs and spices. So those things are not always associated with weight and weight management, but they can be.
Okay, and what about the old drinking and smoking?
Yeah, don't do those things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people...
Well, the smoking, no.
Yeah, a lot of people are aware that smoking is bad for their lung health and even heart health. Turns out it's also bad for your brain health, maybe through the toxic effects of the smoke itself on the brain or the effects on the blood vessels. There's also lots of good resources to quit smoking. So check out, again, good reason to talk to your healthcare team or your pharmacist about ways of reducing and quitting smoking. The data around alcohol, kind of the same. I think people know that too much alcohol isn't good for their health. Turns out excess alcohol is another important risk factor for dementia. And then there's all kinds of other health reasons why Canadians are being advised to reduce their alcohol consumption. Even 2 drinks per week is thought to have some risk with it. So if you drink alcohol, less is better.
If you have been a smoker but you quit, is it too late for your body to reap the benefit of quitting? In other words, have you sort of set yourself already on the path of poorer brain health, or is it the kind of thing that as soon as you stop, you're almost resetting?
That's a great question. You know, in general, it seems like it's never too early or too late to engage in some of these dementia risk reduction behaviors. We know that with lung health, if you quit smoking, you can actually improve your lung function again. So it's probably the case with brain health as well.
Okay, good. That's what we want to hear. It's not. There's never going to be a reason not to change your habits. We want to talk about something that came up earlier in the show, and that's around socializing and community and the importance of it for your brain. Can you actually talk about the science behind that?
Yeah, so there's definitely evidence that increasing your social activity and cognitive activity is good for your brain. And so avoiding social isolation, which many of the speakers have talked about today, having community, those things probably go together a bit. I mean, again, you can engage your brain in cognitive activities on your own, doing puzzles or learning a new language, but there's some value in probably doing several of these things together that stimulate social and cognitive activity. A lot of people are big proponents of doing physical activities in groups as well, because it's sort of the triple threat of physical activity, social activity, and cognitive activity. So learning Tai Chi, for example, is a popular activity that may tick off a few of those different risk reduction boxes.
Is there anything we've left out? Any other tips for reducing dementia? It feels like there's new information coming out on a regular basis, discoveries around dementia and the everyday things that we can do to help ourselves.
Yeah, it is a bit of I think, a good news story about this appreciation for how much we can actually reduce our risk. A couple of key conditions that are also very common, looking after hearing loss, so protect your hearing when you're young, get it checked.
What? Sorry, I had to do that. Terrible.
So, hearing and vision. So, you know, if you have visual symptoms, get them checked. Things like having cataract surgery or getting treatment for cataracts or glaucoma, protecting your vision. And the last one is there seems to be a risk associated with depression. Lots of good treatments for depression. So if you or a loved one have low mood, another thing to get assessed, because treatment may also reduce your risk of dementia down the road.
So important to hear all these things. Wow, thank you. I do want to ask you, is dementia reversible?
So in most cases, most of the common forms of dementia are not reversible, and we don't really have any miracle treatments, which is why reducing risk and prevention is so important. It is very important, though, there are a lot of things like medication side effects that can look like dementia, but are actually treatable. So it's another important reason to get a proper medical assessment if you're having symptoms like memory problems that people are saying, well, we're worried about your brain. Get it checked out because it might be something treatable.
Wow, okay, great. Where do people go to find out more information?
So we do have on our dementiarisk.ca website. It's actually on the McMaster Optimal Aging portal, but it's a curriculum that you can learn more about dementia risk reduction.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right, we've just heard how good lifestyle habits can support brain health and reduce the risk of dementia. But what about what is often called our second brain, your gut, and maintaining a healthy digestive system? To discuss, we're joined by Jamie Bussin. Jamie's the host and producer of The Tonic, heard Saturdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. on Zoomer Radio. He also writes a weekly newsletter that is chock full of tips for healthy aging, and he joins us now. Thank you so much, Jamie. Nice to see you.
Hey, Liz, how are you?
I'm good. Let's talk about the gut. We've talked
do
about
it.
the brain. Let's go right to the gut. And I know that you're the perfect person to talk to about it. And this microbiome, which is the ecosystem of microbes, not words that we use necessarily every day, but they do live in your intestines and play a big role in your health overall. So I'm wondering if you can tell us which microbiomes are the most important and why.
Well, your gut microbiome sort of impacts all of your systems, right? It's all interconnected, and there's a lot of research that's come out about the gut-brain axis through the vagus nerves. So when we're talking about our gut microbiome, we're talking about our lower intestines for the most part, and what's going on in there is the bacteria helps to break down the food that enzymes produced by your body can't. So there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. Probiotics are the good ones.
Okay, and what are the bad ones?
The ones that aren't the probiotics, but
How
the
do
ones,
they get in there?
well,
We're born with them?
you know, airborne infections, food that you're eating that isn't great, you know,
Okay.
and they exist in your gut, you know, all the time. There's billions and billions of them.
You just hope the good outweigh the bad.
Exactly. Well,
Okay.
that's what we have to do. We have to make sure that we're getting the good ones in there.
Right, to go to battle for you.
To do that and to help you get the nutrients out of the food that you're eating. What some of the bacteria does, the good ones, is it helps break down the food that the enzymes that your body creates can't break down.
Right. Is that because of the food that we eat now, that we maybe is more processed, or?
It's an age-old symbiotic relationship. Like we've had bacteria in our systems for forever, and they play a role in the digestion, which helps us get the nutrients that we need to survive.
Okay, let's talk about fermentation, fermented things.
Yeah.
It's something that's sort of a bit of a buzzword right now. What are the benefits of fermented foods, and can you give me some examples?
Sure. Well, it's a natural way to get the good bacteria, the probiotics, into your system. So examples are sauerkraut or kombucha or kimchi. There are yogurts that have probiotics in them, and cheese as well. So you know, if you go to the supermarket, you may see some yogurts, they're adding probiotics into it. So that's a way of getting it in if you're not into the fermented foods, which are kind of sharp and tasting and a little tart. It's not for everybody. So if you don't like those foods, you can get it through yogurt or cheese or even supplements.
I say put it in a blender with your favorite fruit, and it helps make everything taste better, right?
For sure.
If you're having gut discomfort, and like I have several friends that complain about feeling bloated, and they don't know what's wrong, but when they eat, they just don't feel good.
Right.
What do the experts recommend you do?
Well, one thing you could do is try an elimination diet. So people may be familiar with the phrase FODMAP. That's one diet which is meant to be done on a temporary basis.
It was called
FODMAP.
FODMAP. Does that stand for something?
It does. I can't remember all.
Okay.
It's an acronym, but
Okay.
basically, what you would do is an elimination diet. For a lot of people, the gut inflammation comes from eating hyper-processed foods. So if you're shopping, the good stuff to eat is the fruits, the vegetables, the meat, the dairy. But in the center aisles, you have all those boxed goods and pre-prepared foods. Those tend to be the hyper-processed foods, and they have a lot of sugar and chemicals which can cause agitation. You can cut those out. For other people, they may have food sensitivities. For example, they may be sensitive to gluten, or they may be sensitive to lactose. A friend of mine just found out that he's actually sensitive to both. So cutting out those things from your diet could make a huge difference. What you have to remember is this isn't something you should be doing on your own. You should have a doctor or a naturopath or a nutritionist helping you through so that you do the elimination diet properly so you can really find out what's bothering you.
Right, because it's you have to do it for a certain length of time, et cetera.
Yeah, for a lot of people, when they start eliminating some of these foods, you can feel results very quickly. So, you know, it's a very effective and non-intrusive way of finding out what may be bothering you. And then from there, if those elimination diets don't work, well, then you can try something else.
Very hopeful, I like that. Bad food habits can have an impact beyond the gut. What other conditions can you get from bad food habits?
Well, the gut-brain axis, which I referred to before, there's a lot of new research out there, and what's really interesting is that the gut is impacting not just how you feel in your stomach, but also anxiety and depression. But current research suggests that it may even be impacting your brain function, including Alzheimer's or even diseases like Parkinson's. There's a high incidence and a correlation between people who have chronic constipation and people who develop Parkinson's, which is kind of amazing, right?
Yeah.
If you could find out that your gut ailments are tied to the potential of a more serious ailment like Parkinson's, you probably want to change your lifestyle to make sure that you're not going down that road, or at least get ahead of the curve and do some things to ameliorate what might be happening.
Yeah, it's something we take for granted, right? Our gut and our processes during the day.
Yeah.
But when things go sideways, you're affected really quickly. And I know, like for me personally, just anecdotally, when I cut down on sugar, I found my emotional stability was transformed. I didn't have highs and lows. I just felt really much more relaxed. And that was simply by removing my favorite, ice cream and chocolate-covered almonds from my diet, which had an effect on me, but I didn't know until I took them out. So it was fantastic. My family thanked me for that. They really did. Let's talk about sleep. Boy, oh boy, sleep. It's the elusive thing, the thing that seems to be a challenge for a lot of people, but really important for healthy aging. And it's also good for your gut, am I right?
Yeah, I mean, at the Tonic, we sort of espouse the fundamental interconnectedness of everything. So,
Yeah.
Sleep, exercise, diet, mindfulness, it's all sort of together, right? Like if you're eating well, if you're exercising, you're going to get a better night's sleep. Sleep
Right.
is when your body regenerates. You need quality sleep so that your body feels better. And if you are suffering from inflammation in your gut, getting a good night's sleep can help with that. That's when your body recovers. Exercise, it helps expel toxins from your system. It gets your body moving. So the bacteria that's accumulating in your gut, if it's the bad kind, well, it aids your body in eliminating those toxins just by exercising, just by
Wow.
sweating. So it's all kind of interconnected.
Yeah. What's the number one thing you would recommend to someone who's thinking, I need to, I want to improve my gut health? What's the first go-to item?
Eliminate sugar, eliminate hyper-processed foods, get up off the couch, turn off your devices, and get to bed early.
Okay, so I was going to say I'm going to be really boring, but that actually kind of sounds like my life now, and it could be a good one.
But your gut probably feels better, right?
Yeah, happy gut, happy everything.
That's right.
Where do people go to find out more about the Tonic and to subscribe to your newsletter?
Right, so if you're interested in the newsletter or reading the articles or listening to the podcast, go to thetonic.ca.
And you cover a wide range of topics.
So many articles, so many interviews.
It's endless. Thank you so much for being here, Jamie.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. All right, that is it for Healthy Aging and Living in Place Explained. Thanks to Jamie, to all of our guests, and thanks to our studio audience for being here, and thanks for joining us online. You can rewatch this or any of our previous programs just by going to everythingexplained.ca.